Presentation of dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
A new joint legislative study into the parole process suggests ways to save money and improve services. But by their own account, these institutions involved are already involved in crisis. It's your money and your safety, so stay tuned. Dialogue is next. Hello, I'm Joan Cartan Hansen. Thank you for joining us here on Idaho Public Television, on the World Wide Web, and on public radio stations. In 2008, Idaho Commission of Pardons and Paroles conducted almost 2,400 hearings. 65% of these inmates eventually received parole. But delays in the system, communication mishaps, lack of training, and an overburdened staff cost taxpayers money. By one estimate, Idaho could have saved $7 million between January of 2007 and September of 2009 had offenders actually been released by their tentative parole date. Now, the parole process is very complicated. The judiciary, the Department of Correction, the Commission of Pardons and Paroles all play a part, as well as the offender, him or herself. My guest joining us could take several weeks to teach us all about how the process works. Instead, I'd like to take this time to discuss the major points in the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee report on the parole process, which was released Wednesday, to find out why the situation has been called a crisis. Joining me now are Olivia Craven, Executive Director of the Idaho Commission of Pardons and Paroles. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Brett Renke, Director of Department of Correction. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you being here. Representative Darrell Bolts, Vice Chair of the House Appropriations Committee, sir. Thank you. And Senator Elliott Work, Co-Chair of the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
It's an honor.
And of course, we want to hear from you. Give us a call, toll free at 1-800-973-9800. Well, let's jump into the first question. Director Craven and gentlemen, the report shows kind of paints an alarming picture of an agency that's in crisis. Using your own words, Mrs. Craven, that you have to use a shell game to kind of maintain services. The report outlines 26 different recommendations to focus on improving communication, standardizing procedures, improving training, and looking at personnel issues within the Pardon and Parole Commission. So let's start tonight's discussion by talking about why the legislature decided to ask for this study in the first place.
Well, the legislature, our power is in the purse. We allocate funds. And so we have an audit function to look at the agencies where we're allocating money and to examine whether or not those agencies are making the best and highest use of taxpayer funds. In this instance, corrections, of course, has taken up a larger and larger portion of our budget. And we had really two issues that we had dealt with on corrections that we asked about our audit staff to look into, which was one was facilities, and the other was the pardons and parole process. Because there are always, there are stories about how people are kept longer in prison than they should be maybe, and of course that costs extra money. And so there was a desire to understand what the process is, how the process works, whether or not the communication between the Department of Corrections and the Parole Commission is adequate to make sure that we're doing the most effective and efficient job in getting people through that system and released when it's safe to release them, but also as quickly as they can be released.
I want to walk very briefly through the parole process with our two directors here. So it starts off by an offender is found guilty in court and then goes.
The offender would be found guilty in court. They would then be actually be working with our pre-sentence investigators. We would then, the judge would actually then pass a sentence that would send the individual to prison to what we call the reception and diagnostic unit within the Department of Corrections. The offender then would be placed in a facility that would be determined appropriate at that RDU process. Then the offender would begin programming. Olivia, I think then it goes on to you.
Okay. Before the person is eligible for parole, about 6 months before that, they have a hearing with the hearing officer. Actually, it's about 8 months with the hearing officer. Hearing officer conducts an investigation, prepares a report for the commission. Then the commissioners come in about 6 months before they're eligible, conducts a hearing to determine if they should be paroled. They take into account their history, everything about the person, including what they've been doing while they're in prison. Are they in the appropriate programs? And quite frankly, if they appear to be a safe risk to put on parole. As you said, 65% of the people that we
Right,
see do get parole, which is a very high percentage, and then they are processed out.
So if parole is granted, then
The decision is
made.
made, and the department works with the commission's decision, and we make every attempt to try to get everyone out
Okay.
on their eligibility date.
and then if parole is denied,
The commission can grant another hearing. In some cases, they may pass them to the full-term release date. Those are cases that usually people don't want parole. We have people that do not want to get out.
because there are requirements that you have to fulfill if
Yes.
you're going to be.
And other offenders that may be a behavior problem, et cetera. But those are those decisions are made based upon what is the best risk and what is the best thing to do for the society, quite frankly.
I want to warn viewers and listeners that we've given a very simplified form of this
Yes.
lesson. It's very complicated, and parole is not a guarantee.
That's right.
Right. There is no right to parole in the state of Idaho.
Just
Could I like to just interject
Sure.
one thing? I think it's very important what Olivia just said about some people not wanting parole at that point in time. You've got some people in the system who do not want to go through the programming.
Yes.
And they may be a person who wants to be a termer, so when they get out, they are not under parole. They're basically free at that point in time. So sometimes the statistics that you see are accurate, but you have to understand what is behind those statistics.
That's right. That's
Thank
so
you,
true.
Representative.
So
That's
true.
true.
and very quickly, some programs. When we say programming, we mean things like alcohol, drug treatment, education. What
That's true. There's a variety of different types of program, cognitive self-change. There's quite a list of programs that we would determine at the regional diagnostic unit and then work very closely with the parole commission so that we make sure that all those requirements are met prior to that tentative parole date.
And constitutionally, there's a reason why there's a separation, why the Department of Correction doesn't take everything through. It's in the Constitution.
That's true. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, please go right ahead.
There is a Department of Correction and the Parole Commission, and there are two different functions. Parole boards were really created to give an unbiased review of the inmates rather than the department who is taking care of them while they're there. So really that's where the separation
And so
is.
that's why there's two. So people
Yes.
understand that's why there's two kind of separate entities that
Right.
agencies that we're talking about.
I think it's also important to note, too, that the courts take care of
Take
the
us
front
the-
door.
right.
The Parole Commission has the back door.
That's a good
And we take care of everything in the middle.
Okay.
And so
good.
it's a very, there's a very important balance that we have to try to balance between the needs of the court and the needs of the commission. And then, of course, the needs of our staff and inmates.
All right. Let's step into that first issue in the report. Much of the report discussed a disconnect, a lack of communication between the two entities, and that asked for some standardization. Why did you think there was that initial conflict, or not conflict, but lack of communication between the caseworkers that were in the Department of Correction and the hearing officers and their ability to share information about prisoners?
You know, I believe there is good communication. Could it be better? Absolutely. We've created different processes of communication over the years, so there's standardization of communication. But when we're playing the crisis game, as you mentioned at the first of this, we might have gotten a little away from that. But we encourage case managers to let us know about the offender because they're the person that's working with them in the prison system. So we encourage them to give information to the hearing officer. We have a practice that they can put, they're supposed to put some information in the computer system. So when the hearing officer goes to meet with them, if the case manager can't be around, the information is there. We're going to work on some of these things over the next year to make sure that's being done appropriately.
I think it's an important component too. In one of the key findings, Director Craven mentioned some of the challenges we've had with just trying to share information through technology, and we are very, very close to being able to roll out a new CIS or correctional information system, and that'll happen later this year. When that happens, I think it's really going to enhance the process, and we'll do a much better job of being able to share information from the front door, from the region, from the RDU unit, all the way back through to the parole process. There's gaps there now, and I think we're going to be able to stitch that together much better as we get later on in the year and we get this new system rolled out.
And I think, Joe, I'd just like to add, the reason that we're having this discussion is because I think that everybody's effort is to try to make it so that everything operates as efficiently as possible as you go through the process. If something gets dropped somewhere, And for instance, the parole commission, the commissioners decide that an inmate needs a different kind of programming, and that doesn't happen until they have their parole hearing. And then there's a backup to get that person into the programming, and then you have that delay to get through the programming and get them out of jail. Then the reality is that we've spent a lot of extra money for the extra days that the person spent in our prisons. And
Yes.
on the legislative side, what we want to see is, through a safest process as possible, to be as efficient as we can so that everything works perfectly, ideally, to get that person out at the earliest possible date, having completed all that programming and all those steps. But we want the earliest date possible because that's the best and highest use of the taxpayer dollars.
Because they're also still on parole in the community. They're not.
And then they become supervised in
On
the
parole.
community.
I think the challenge that we have with that is that community safety has to be our first concern. And in the ideal, perfect world, it's going to be very difficult to have everything fall in order because you're talking about people. And you're talking about people that are in crisis, and you're talking about people that are not there voluntarily. And so there's some real challenges with that. And so I would have to agree with the senator. We need to continue to get all of our ducks in a row. But when several of those things don't line up, it can really create some problems for us.
But I don't know that you can necessarily argue that efficiency is the opposite of public safety. That you can still be efficient and have public safety.
Yes.
You can be efficient and have public safety, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that that's a lot what this report is about. The auditors that we have in the legislature are very highly qualified. They're award-winning across the country, some of the best staff in the country. And the report's really about how do we make changes in the process, get the Department of Correction and the Parole Commission, if more effectively communicating. What is it that the legislature can do to help to facilitate that as well? Because there are some recommendations for us as well in here for things that we should be doing.
Well, there was one thing that I was concerned in reading the report, and I encourage viewers to read the report for themselves and make up their own minds. There's a link on our website so you can see it and go to that and read it. But what concerned me is that many of the recommendations you wrote, I don't have the staff to do this. I don't have the staff to do this. It sounds like you're dancing on the edge. And as a public safety thing, that worries me. That if you don't have enough breathing room to step back and get the training manuals in order or get the checklists put together, that's and so this is a question for you: is it really that close to the edge? And then if you're looking at the money to pay for it, are you happy with the money, with it being on that close to the edge? So.
We have to prioritize what we're doing. And quite frankly, parole hearings and parole releases are our priority. Some of the other things that do not affect this efficiency of conducting hearings, making decisions, and getting people out, we have put on the back burner. We've had to. We have positions that are vacant, and we're all in crisis in the state, and we're just doing the best we can to make sure that the commissioners have the right information at the right time so they can make the right decision. And then we get people out as efficiently as we can. And that's where our priorities are.
But at a certain point, don't you need to step back and look at the process and have the time? And if you don't have the staff to do that, then you're in trouble. Then you really are in trouble.
Absolutely. But, we appreciate some of the recommendations in here. And as I was telling Senator Work, we don't disagree with most of the things in the report. And we're going to be working on those things. And hopefully staff are having to pick up extra duties this year. But that's every state agency.
Yeah.
That's not just us.
And I guess I might weigh in a little bit here in terms of the staffing aspect, because that's something, that when the budget requests come in, Olivia has asked for new staff at times, and when you don't have money, you can't afford those type of situations. And I think the other issue too is that since Director Renke's taken over in corrections, we've seen a real effort, and I think, from my perspective anyhow, a lot more communication going on between the Department of Corrections and Olivia's Department of Parole and Probation type situation. And so, and if you take a look at the statistics over the last 3 years, if you go from July 1 of 2007 to July 1 of 2009, we had less people incarcerated in July 1 of 2009 than we had in 2007. And so something is happening there, okay? And I think there's a combination of things, but we did see an increase in terms of the number of people who were being paroled at that point in time. And that, again, puts us into a crisis mode because she's having to deal with more parole hearings and try
Right,
to get
with
those
fewer
people
staff
out.
and-
So it's a vicious cycle. It really is.
But
Yet that's a very good thing.
Yes.
It's a very good thing to
is.
have happen. It is.
It is.
Because that's the system beginning to function as a
That's
system.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
but it disturbs me that we're looking at a situation where you may have a staff that's so overburdened that things are going to get dropped. Papers aren't going to be in the right place at the right time because people don't have the time or the procedures to make sure it works.
But we can go one step further. We can go to community corrections where we have probation officers whose workload right now is about maxed out, and the more people we put out,
Wow.
unless we get some more parole officers out there, then we're overburdening them. And then you get in the situation where the parole officers are not monitoring the parolees very well, and so then your recidivism rate might come back up again. So
we need
it's-
to put him on the
Correct.
payroll.
Yes, I like that.
Well, and that does beg the issue that if you don't get people out on parole, they stay in jail and it costs money.
That's right.
And if
That's
we
right.
haven't got that, if
Right.
we haven't got
That's
an
right, like
efficient
Senator
system,
Brooks concerned.
so you're not necessarily saving money by
true.
reducing the staff.
That's right.
You're just going to pay for
right.
it later.
That's right. Pay me an hour, pay me
And
later.
that's a lot of the things that are going on in state government right now. We're saving cents here to spend dollars later on. The interesting thing about both what the directors are dealing with is that we're really asking in state government now for these guys to be driving down the highway at 70 miles an hour and change their tires. I mean, that's what we're doing. And that's a very, very difficult balancing act. And you have to admire the fact that these guys are sitting here and willing to try to do this. And I know Director Ranke has been, how long has it been? A couple of years now? Or
3 years in this
3 years,
agency,
okay,
corrections, yes.
after you left juvenile corrections.
After
And
10 years
did a
there,
great
yeah.
job at juvenile and
Thank
has
you.
come over to the adults. And I would say that things are moving in the right direction. And I look forward to seeing if we can get some of those lug nuts off those wheels and slap those puppies
a good
back on
analogy.
before we have a
I
train
like
wreck.
that, sir.
But it is a very, very difficult thing, and the public should understand that when we're trying to do these things, there's nothing simple out there. Everything's interrelated. You push in one side, and it bulges out the other. And everybody's trying to do the balancing act right now.
I did get a Facebook question coming in, and I'd like to ask that. It's from Mark, who'd like to know, my question is, if you are making the pardon and parole system more efficient, does that include allowing all offenders, if they have proven they have changed and had no violations, the chance to self-initiate the parole board for an early release, easing the casework load?
We have about 85 self-initiated progress reports every month that we review. These are people that had a prior decision by the commission and it was a negative decision, or they wanted something different, maybe remove some programming conditions. We grant about a third of those. We're looking at those. We're even talking to the department about some staff-initiated things. So we will continue to do that. What we want are people to show that they've changed. It's an appeal process, and it's the best process that we have, and it does work very efficiently. However, to do it right, you have to have staff that can put all the work together.
Let's go to our first caller. James in Boise. James. Are you there, James? Let's see if I can get it. Well, if I can get James on. I don't seem to be getting James on. Let me try one more time. I'm sorry, James, if we can't get you, I'll put you on hold and we'll see if we can get that technical thing to work. Let's see. Let's see. James, you there? Well, my apologies. I'll put you back on hold and we'll try that in just a minute. Another part that was mentioned in the report was some question about personnel issues. And I don't want to get too detailed on it, but it did concern me that, and I think it would concern someone who runs a business or as a manager, if you had 40% of your staff complaining that there were problems within the agency, that would be a wake-up notice. Did you find that in the report?
We are going through a Department of Human Resources study. We will be doing that over the next year with all of staff and management. Yes, it concerns me. And we will be dealing with that. That's the best way to do it, through human resources, and it's, confidentiality issues, and we will be addressing everything.
Okay. Have you ever seen this sort of report coming out before?
I'm not sure.
the report that you saw, there are 26 different recommendations of this report. You've been sitting on the JLOC Commission. Have there been any reports of this size or this magnitude have you seen in your career there?
Well, the Office of Performance Evaluations, which is our audit staff, we call them OPE, they've done some huge audits in the past. Health and welfare stands out as one. I think it took them a full year and they concentrated only on that department. And I can't remember how many recommendations. So we've had reports that have had a huge amount of recommendations. And, you know, they go from the very small technical recommendation to kind of a more broader perspective sometimes. So the reports, I don't think is dramatically unusual. The report, our OPE was forced to veer into some areas that they normally don't go into because of things that happened during the course of the evaluation. But the reality is these are a real set of pragmatic recommendations that, if they were implemented, would result in more efficiencies and public safety would be served as well. So I think we're all at this table kind of working in the same direction. We all know that if we can get these things done, that we will. And incidentally, we will go back. The Office of Performance Evaluations is going to do a 6-month revisit to find out how's it going, what's going on with these recommendations, has anybody acted on these, and that'll get reported back to our committee, and we'll probably get another 6-month report for the next legislative session. And again, our legislature will be able to act on some of the issues that are ours in this report as well next year.
In general, though, do you think that this is enough of a wake-up call for change, or are we going to just have to wait 6 months to see it? Where does this?
But you need to remember there's 2 reports this summer.
Right, there was
we
one
had
earlier.
one
on
entitled
correction.
"The Operation Efficiencies in Our Idaho Prison System," and then we've one now on the probation and parole process. So in both of these areas, some of the things that we're doing as an agency is zero-based budgeting, which is something that the governor's office through his budget office is working with us on, taking a look at going all the way back to Idaho Code, what Idaho Code requires us to do, and in making sure that we build the budget back and do the necessary time studies. The first report that was put out has us razor thin on our staffing patterns in our facilities. Today we're taking 80,000 furlough hours across the state with all of our staff. We have over 50 positions we're holding open. We've already laid off 44 positions. We're very concerned about that because it's terribly important that in this process we keep our staff safe, we keep our facilities safe, and we work with the Parole Commission like never before. Because as we look at the challenges we're facing in fiscal year 10, that ends in June, and fiscal year 11, that begins in July, there's some serious shortages. And you've been tracking that today, I'm sure, as well, with what Representative Boalsman has been engaged in. So,
Fiscal year 11, what does it look like?
Fiscal year 11 right now, we're looking at a projection of $2.29 billion. And you take a look at that, and I've talked to a number of people and say, look where we've been and how we got where we are. 2 years ago, we were looking at $3 billion. We set a budget 2 years ago of $2.94 billion. Last year, it was 2.5. And so here we are, clear down here at 2.29 for next year. And, you know, I hear people all the time, well, put a penny on the sales tax. 1 cent won't even get us to where we were last year, okay? Right. And so it takes a lot more money than what a lot of people think. And I just don't think there's a will in the legislature, and I don't think there's a will in the governor's office to have any kind of a tax increase this year, okay?
But if someone out there has $750 million that they want to let us have,
We'll take it.
we'll take the check.
and John, this has happened so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in just the
Yes.
last 18 months, we're sitting here with
Yes.
a population of 2010 with numbers that has dropped, you know, that much. We're probably back to 2005. From a
Really
revenue standpoint.
budgetary standpoint, you're probably back in the 2003, 2000.
And so
We're
that
back.
really puts a significant strain, and we're beginning to see that in our staff, and I'm very concerned about that.
Then that goes back to
Yeah.
my fear of having to play, as you put it, a
Yes.
shell game to try and continue. How
right.
can, in fiscal year, the next fiscal year that we're setting, if it's another 9% cut, what are you going to do? And
Wow.
where is it, and if we take that 9% hit on this side, where is it going to come out on the other end?
Well, we have not had our budget say yet, so the representative would have to give us an insight as to what we can expect. But I think we're looking at something around 7%.
Yeah.
And
Most of the budgets right now for this year, we're looking at a 7% reduction, okay?
On top of
what they've
reductions.
done before.
If they had a 7%, they're not going to take and add on to that. But if they were above 7, they're not going down. But if they were below 7, we bring them up to 7%.
So it's again, almost as confusing as the parole process is
Yes,
the
it
state
is.
legislature's budgeting
It
system.
is. It's
It
very
is.
difficult.
It's very.
And,
So
and-
is that a 7% cut from the reduced amount in fiscal year 10 for fiscal year 11, or is it a 7% cut overall between 10 and 11?
It's a 7% cut on fiscal year 2010 budget.
Which is
okay?
the current year
Right,
that we're in.
right,
So another
right.
up to a 7%.
Right.
So what about the next year?
I can't tell you what next year's going to be, okay? Because it all depends upon where the revenue stream is, okay? I have no idea. If revenues don't increase, heaven help us, okay? I think there will probably be, and I'm speculating here, and I don't want anybody to take this as being gospel or anything else, but
you get your pencil?
I got my mind open.
it's recorded, Director.
Okay, fine. Okay.
You know, I think that at some point you get to the place that where public safety and health are jeopardized, and I think at that point, and we're getting close there, okay? At
that's
that
the question.
point, you will get where revenue enhancement will become almost mandatory, okay?
I think the
And
thing.
a Republican said that, not a Democrat.
Well, it won't be an election year next year, okay?
I think the thing that we're concerned about as an agency is making sure that when the Parole Commission wants to see programming, that as we go through and make these necessary adjustments, that we don't come out of this losing an arm or a leg. We need, and we have tried and been very successful up to this point, of making our cuts across the agency and maintaining our education component, our programming component. Because if we're not careful with that, the system will back up and cease to work.
That's right.
And all the work that these legislators have put into this will be for naught. And inmates will not get the proper programming. They're going to be in longer, and it's going to create problems. So
And it's going to cost more.
absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. And
Yes.
there's a balance that we're trying to maintain. And I think that's the challenge we're faced with right now.
The other issue I think that we always have to think about is as we look at other states and some of the financial difficulty they've gone through, and we look at California and they released what 40,000 inmates or
Yes.
whatever.
They're on
their
Remember
way to
that?
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
On their way to that.
And you know, I haven't found anybody that wants to release inmates in Idaho. Okay. I've had people say, well, can't we just release them? The director has no authority to do that at this point in time.
This
Thank
director
you,
here
sir.
does.
Thank you, sir.
You don't, okay?
I don't.
Yeah.
Remember, the courts have the front door. Parole Commission's got the back door.
Thank
On
you
that,
very
I'm
much.
afraid we're almost out of time. I want to we do have some phone callers on. If I can get the equipment to work, we'll take those phone calls in our web extra. So just hang in there with me, stay on the phone lines, and we'll try and catch you on the other side as we do this. I'm afraid we have run out of time. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank my Olivia Craven,
Thank you.
Representative, Senator. Thank you all for being here. I
Great.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
for the
If you'd like
opportunity.
to see that JLOC report, go to our website at idahoptv.org. Click on Dialogue. You'll find links and more information and that web extra conversation. Thanks for joining us. You'll also find us on Facebook and YouTube. Search for Dialogue on Idaho Public Television, and you'll find us there on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. So check out all those venues, and we'll see you next time here on Dialogue.
Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho. To order a copy of this program from Idaho Public Television, call our toll-free number or visit us on the World Wide Web